One thing we have to remember is that God is a God of the suddenlies. I think when we go through different tests and different things that it feels like we're waiting longer than we expected we needed to wait. And in that time, you can start to doubt what you felt God was leading you to. And I think it's natural to, in those moments, to start to maybe pull back from what God said to you. But I think the reality is that if God's spoken to you, if God's led you in some way, that waiting can be a test to see if you will continue to have faith and trust him. And I think that instead of pulling back in those moments, even though it's what like our flesh wants to do, we want to say, that probably wasn't God. I'm just going to find this other thing to do. And maybe sometimes, God does obviously redirect our paths. But I think there are lots of moments where when we feel that urge to pull back because whatever hasn't happened yet, I think that's the exact moment that God wants us to press in even more to his presence and to really lean into him and say, like, God, I don't know how this is going to happen. I don't exactly know, how this is going to work, but I trust you to make it work because it is not out of my own strength or my mind that I can figure out where you're leading me. I have to submit my understanding to you. And I think that that's sometimes what we have to what God, I feel like, needs us to I guess, understand is that we don't have to understand his timing. We don't have to understand his plan. And I think sometimes he wants us to expect sudden victory. It doesn't mean it'll necessarily happen right away, but if we always expect sudden victory, we continue to press in. If we've heard from God, if we continue to press into what he said, even when it doesn't look like it could happen, I think that's where God's like, okay, like you have faith, you trust. And I think that we can sort of, in a sense, be more ready to receive what he has for us. And I think sometimes maybe the reason we haven't walked into it is because we haven't pressed in. We've sort of leaned back and said, it probably wasn't God. And he's like, no, it is me. Please press in more, press in more, press in more. So, and then one verse I want to share, Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So don't give up. If you felt like God's led you to something, keep pressing into him. And, if God's leading you in that way, he will make a way. Just trust.